Charles Leclerc's first major mistake of the 2022 season helped reignite the Formula 1 title battle in a dramatic end to the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix. Leclerc spun and damaged his Ferrari in the closing stages of the Imola race, throwing away an easy podium and dropping him to 6th at the finish after a pit stop to change his front wing. At the same time, Max Verstappen's flawless drive to earn a second win of the season slashed the gap at the top of the championship by 19 points in a single weekend. Leclerc's race started on the back foot as he fell from 2nd to 4th with a weaker start in damp conditions. He also lost his rear gunner Carlos Sainz when the other Ferrari was turned around by Daniel Ricciardo in a first corner incident. That triggered a safety car, after which Leclerc was at least able to repass the McLaren of Lando Norris. But while he could close up to the second Red Bull of Sergio Perez, there was no way past either on intermediates or once everybody had switched to slicks. Leclerc's race was petering out into a safe but unspectacular third place finish, a result that would at least have helped him retain a healthy points lead, even with Verstappen romping to a dominant victory. But that all changed when Ferrari switched strategy by stopping Leclerc with 13 laps remaining and triggered reactionary stops from Red Bull for both Perez and Verstappen. Leclerc dropped briefly behind Norris because of his extra stop for softs, but repassed him at the start of the next lap, then rapidly caught Perez. After he hounded the Red Bull for a couple of laps though, Leclerc smashed the curb on the entry to the first part of the Variante Alta, lost control and spun. He hit the barrier hard enough to damage the front wing, but was at least able to return to the pits for a new one and a new set of medium tyres. And while a charging drive in the remaining laps salvaged 6th to limit the damage, it was still 7 points carelessly dropped. Leclerc knew it was a bad mistake too, admitting post-race he paid the price for being too greedy and calling it a spin that should not have happened. While Leclerc and Ferrari were left to reflect on a Grand Prix that fell well below their previous 2022 standards, Verstappen and Red Bull enjoyed a perfect race. In fact, it was more than that, it was a perfect weekend for Verstappen, who revived his championship hopes with a clean sweep of pole position, victory in the sprint race and the Grand Prix, and the fastest lap bonus point. F1's revised point system for the sprint this year means Verstappen netted a bumper 34-point haul and slashed Leclerc's points lead from 46 at the start of the weekend to 27 by the end of it. Verstappen topped the rain hit qualifying on Friday to secure pole on the grid for Saturday's sprint race, but a gear sync problem dropped him behind Leclerc at the start. He chased the Ferrari for almost the entire sprint before pulling off a bold overtake around the outside into Tamburello with 2 laps left. It was a moment of class to mark the first pass for the lead in an F1 sprint, and it gave Verstappen a small psychological edge heading into Sunday. But there would be no need for any kind of repeat heroics, as Verstappen was untouchable on easily his and Red Bull's most emphatic performance of the season so far. Verstappen was never threatened after he retained the lead off the line, managed the tricky conditions on a drying track with apparent ease, and Red Bull got all the major decisions right as well. It was the perfect response to Verstappen's retirement in Australia, where he had suffered his second non-finish in the first 3 races. Now he has 2 victories in 3 starts, a much more encouraging statistic. Leclerc finishing 6th instead of 3rd ultimately only cost him 7 points, when it could have been a lot worse. In that sense, he will be relieved and consider it a relatively light escape. But the weekend overall has a big impact on the title fight, bringing Red Bull and Verstappen back into contention and putting scrutiny on Leclerc and Ferrari for the first time this year. Ferrari's strategy change seemed odd given Leclerc was on for such a comfortable 3rd place, although managing the tyres to the end was a tough ask after such an early round of pit stops because the track was drying. And Ferrari had seemed particularly vulnerable on tyre life this weekend, suffering from graining in the sprint before Leclerc even asked about switching to Plan D in the Grand Prix itself. Forced or not, the late switch to softs injected jeopardy into Leclerc's race, as even though he was quickly back ahead of Norris, he then found himself in a position to attack Perez. That meant Leclerc was taking risks at the end of a Grand Prix that could have had a straightforward finish. But all that said, Leclerc cannot be excused from such an error, one that was totally at odds with how brilliant his season has been up to this point. Mathematically, he still holds a healthy advantage in the championship, but Red Bull is now just 11 points behind Ferrari in the constructors contest. Psychologically, Verstappen and Red Bull will take a great boost from this, especially with upgrades in the works to make the overweight RB18 lighter and faster. It was only 2 weeks ago that Verstappen was massively playing down his title chances, and we were saying Leclerc and Ferrari were the obvious favourites. But Verstappen could not have dreamed of this kind of point swing in a single weekend, one that shows the early season dominance of Leclerc and Ferrari will count for nothing if they make major mistakes.